said,
Okay. Now, you understand therefore why the Eucharist and the sacrament of marriage are the two biggest signs of what Catholicism was all about. Symbols, the biggest symbols. They are both covenantal. All right, I'm going to close this. Somebody is going to start talking to me about, we're moving on now, this is very good. We're moving over now to habits of the heart. All right, who wants to talk to me about what you read? And I put down the first half of the book, the book. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Go ahead.
This, I only read chapter 1.
That's good, that's good. Tell me about chapter 1.
It describes 4 different people and how they live their lives. There's like a guy who is, I guess, a workaholic, and then a woman who dedicated her life to psychology, and the other 2.
Help them with it, guys. Help them with it.
Forgot that.
one of them was really deeply involved with his community. His like
Yeah.
hometown, Joe Gorman. And
Dude
then-
from Massachusetts or something.
Yeah. Who did you say? So you said Margaret Ullman,
Yeah.
and then Wayne was the guy who went to the military and
Yeah.
he was deeply rooted in social justice and wanted to kind of interact and defend his community or something like that.
He wanted to help the people, he felt that they were being charged too much for rent,
Yep.
etc. And he wanted to help them take back their rights.
Okay. Okay. Why did the people, why did the authors start the book with these 4?
Was there different perspectives on purpose and happiness?
That's right. And why did they start with them? Because of who the authors are.
Was it their perspectives?
Well, they're sociologists and psychologists. So what they're trying to do is they say they interviewed so many people, and that what they did was develop 4 different character types that they see in the American dominant culture. Okay, and they're limiting themselves here to people who are representing the dominant culture. They're not going to subcultures, African American, Hispanic, etc., etc. But they're saying that these people reflect what makes America tick in its way of life overall. Notice we talk about the dominant American culture. There are many subcultures in the United States, but the dominant American culture flows from this, from these institutions, and principally from the individualistic understanding of the human person. We're going to see this. And what did you notice about Gorman? What did it say?
About who?
Gorman,
Gorman.
he was the one that.
And Joe Gorman. Who was a woman?
Margaret Ullman.
Yeah, talk to me about Margaret a little bit. That's what I wanted, the one I wanted.
Margaret was a little bit utilitarian, right, with her family. Even in the perspective of her family, where her and Joe were kind of opposites, where Joe was deeply rooted in his community, and Margaret was kind of like, I want to, my own personal goals, or like my own personal ambitions are what drive me, right? Is that not right?
Yeah, she was all about, I'm responsible for my own actions. And yeah, I remember reading about how she was even talking about her kids. It's like, my kids are responsible for their own actions too. And it's like, that's kind of, I mean, that's a different view sometimes.
It's good and it's bad, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, it's good and bad. But when you read these, did you see aspects of yourself in each of these people? Don't be afraid to confess that. Or did you see in them people that you know? These are character types. And we're going to look at other character types for the American culture. They're going to be coming up in the next thing. Okay? My book here. My book out. My book is falling apart. But let's do this. Let's get over here. So Brian Palmer, successful businessman, top-level manager, rapid rise to a corporation. His idea of success. My value system has changed a little bit as a result of a divorce and re-examining life values. 2 years ago, confronted with the workload I have right now, I would stay in the office and work till midnight, go home, go to bed, get up at 6, and go back and work until midnight, until such time as it got done. Now, I just kind of flip the bird and walk out. My family life is more important to me than walking. So here's the struggle with the values, huh? You're starting with a culture that's calling you to work, and the work is going to give you your success. And he's there dedicated to that all the time, forgetting the family. And now he says, I just flipped the whole thing over here. I'm going to put my family. Now 41, he is bursting with restless energy. He was deeply committed to succeeding at his career and family responsibilities. The vast majority of my time, from say the age of 15 to 22 or 23, was devoted towards giving myself pleasure of one sort or another. Well, that's the age of adolescence to young adulthood. He's in there trying to figure out how he's going to be able to give himself pleasure in all kinds of ways. I couldn't stand not having enough money to get by on. And with my wife unable to contribute to the family income, it seemed like the right thing to do. So they go on. And his thing is self-reliance on page 4. Self-reliance is one characteristic I have pretty high up in my value system. Wow. Self-reliance, what does that say to him about his understanding of the human person? And see, my 3 things. All of them are struggling with what it means to be a human person. All 4. Okay. Over here. Human person. And naturally that's going to affect this up here. And it's going to affect this over here. The world. How they do that. So he says right out blatantly, look, self-reliance is it. I could make it on my own. Doesn't imply any relationships here, huh? He is on his own, making it for himself. And I have to tell you this. When I see a school like St. John's School here in Houston, that is the most prominent attitude of the students who are going forward with their careers. How would that differ in a Catholic school?
We just talked about the mission statement, right? Of creating a more perfect kingdom.
It's relationships. And that you are all working together, and that you need each other in working together. You aren't the self-made person. You are not the self-made person. Anyway, I'm going to go back to this team stuff with you again. Yeah, you're not on that field by yourself. You don't play the game by yourself. And to say that you're a self-made person is the biggest lie that ever existed, because you know that spiritually you have to say that everything I have received. Everything I have received. My breath, my body, everything I have received. And what does that do? It puts you in a relationship, interdependency, rather than independency. Interdependency. What was my concept of what constituted a reasonable relationship, he says. I guess I felt an obligation to care for, materially provide for a wife and my children in a style to which I'd like to see them become accustomed. Providing for my family materially was important. Some people end up only doing that. Providing for the family materially. And everything else is their own little world. One day I came home, in fact, our house was for sale, and we had an offer for the house. My wife said, before you accept an offer, you should probably know that once we sell the house, we will live in different houses. So it goes on. And then he has a revolution in his thinking over here on page 5. Revolution in Brian's thinking came from the re-examination of true sources of joy and satisfaction in his life. Ooh, that means you have to reconsider what you are and who you are and how you're constituted. Otherwise, you don't change your value system or see other things. And it is particularly in a marriage to a woman very different from his first wife that Brian has discovered a new sense of himself and a different understanding of what he wants out of life. He has a new sense of what love can be. Oh, come on now. That's what we should be doing in a Catholic school. Helping people have a new sense of what love can be. These kids that come in there and they're in messed up families and they're dropped off, they're picked up, they're maybe driven to their activities and so forth and so on, but they're not getting any love. They're getting all the material things provided for them over and over and over. So you begin to see the challenge. And this is everything. When I talk about a school, I'm talking about a parish as well. Parish life. It's incredible. Sharing experiences of goals, sharing of feelings, working together to solve problems, etc. My viewpoint of true love, husband and wife type of relationship, is one that is founded on mutual respect, admiration, affection, the ability to give and receive freely. Wow. That's what we call a covenantal marriage and relationship, as opposed to the contractual one, where people just go in and say, look, this is what I want out of this marriage. Can you give that to me? And everyone says, this is what I want out of the marriage. Can you give that to me? And then he said, okay, that's a contract. And then what if the terms of the contract change? What if you just simply say to the partner, you're not doing what I want you to do. You're not fulfilling me. Okay, you break the contract, go. These are deep implications here. I think, and as sociologists, they want to show you that they have based this on interviews and all of this material they have from real life. And don't just begin with principles telling you what's going on out there, okay? So let's continue on. Brian's is an individual success story. He has succeeded materially, yet, despite the personal triumph Brian's life represents, despite the fulfillment he seems to experience, there is still something uncertain, something poignantly unresolved in his story. The difficulty becomes most evident when Brian tries to explain why it is that his current life, in fact, better than his early life, built around single-minded devotion to his career. His description of his reasons for changing his life and his current happiness seem to come down mainly to a shift in his notion of how he perceives things, of what would make him happy. His new goal seems arbitrary, in other words, and unexamined as his early pursuit of material things. So he's making a change, but he doesn't know why. He thinks he's going to be happier. And as a result, this too may pass and he's going to think something else. And he can never get down to the reality of the longing of the human heart. And the longing of the human heart, The holy longing of the human heart is to love and be loved. Real love. To love and be loved. So a pastor in a parish is accompanying people along their journey where they're changing from this to that and looking here and for the satisfaction, and they can't find it because nobody opens the key to say to the new law consists principally in the Holy Spirit, and that's God's love indwelling you. That's where we have to go with this. That exclusive pursuit of success now seems to me not a good way to live. That sentence. That exclusive pursuit of success. Man, look at those guys on Wall Street that brought the thing down around our heads in 2008. They were formed in Harvard, Yale, all these places. And their biggest goal was to go on Wall Street and the first year get $1 million bonus. And that's what they wanted to do. And that's what they did. And they played it in the system. Now, for Brian, down bottom of that page on 6, what is good is what one finds rewarding. If one's preferences change, so does the nature of the good. It all depends on personal preference. Wow. That's not going to get you very far either. Okay. Look over on the next page. In a world of potentially conflicting self-interests, no one can really say that one value system is better than another. Now, that certainly is not what we teach in a Catholic school. We teach that there is an objective reality, and we have to live up to that objective reality of the love of Christ. Okay? Not relative. It's not just based on your self-interest. And Brian says great store on one basic principle, the importance of honesty and communications. Ooh. I want you to think in terms of honesty and communication, and think of CNN, Fox, MSNBC, all those kinds of places. Are you going to get honesty or are you going to get communication? You're going to get neither. Neither. Reinforces, everything reinforces, what reinforces the self-interest. Solving conflicts becomes a matter of technical problem solving, not of moral decision. Lying, which would interfere in a critical way with the ability to communicate accurately and resolve interpersonal conflicts, is thus wrong. But even here, wrongness is largely a matter of practicality. It doesn't pay you to lie. You're going to get caught, so don't do it. And it has nothing to do with morality, it's technicality. So these 4 people over here, my values, personal preferences, the only ethical problem is to make the decision that accords with one's preference. That's on page 8. That's the ethical problem. To be true unto thyself. Namely, if you want this preference, you make decisions which are going to get you there. Now, here we're getting into the thick of it, okay? What you're getting here is the fallout of the restricted understanding of the human person that came from John Locke. John Locke says, you're created, you go out and make your way. And as far as a society goes, a society is only the result of people coming together and reconciling their self-interests. You give up something, I'll give up something, but you're there alone. Isn't right? Your preferences, what's going to make you happy, when those preferences change, your happiness change, your goal, it's constantly in motion. And that is highly a reflection of the dominant way of American thinking. I mean, if you go to a place like California, you go to San Francisco, you go to other of these very, very liberal, I would call them liberal kinds of communities, this is the thinking. This is the pattern, okay? If you go up to Providence, Rhode Island, you go to Oregon, you know, they were telling me in Austin on Tuesday, they were telling me that Californians are pouring in there by the dozens. And I said, wait, I said, if you thought that Austin was liberal before, wait until you see the worldview that they bring with them. And as they grow their chickens in coops out in their backyard, this seems to be the thing, grow your own chickens in your coop. And get your fresh eggs. But they can't just be ordinary chickens. They have to be really special chickens. So, did you get that, Thomas? I get the best chickens. Okay. All right. Joe Gorman is a different thing. He comes out of this little town and he wants a goal set by your family and community, not using your family and community to achieve your own individual goals. So he wants a kind of a common good, but you do that in the context of the family and the community. But these are very small communities. These are New England communities with the church down on the main section and the green, as they call it, and so forth. So, under Joe's direction, the anniversary celebration turned out to be a great success. The festivities stretched out for 9 months. They were celebrating the sesquicentennial of Suffolk in Massachusetts. So what's really important for him is that, and that the town is able to take care of all of these needs, but only of the town. They don't want anybody else coming in and upsetting it. But really what was going on in that town was all these people were coming because of the industries, and they were building all these apartments and so forth, changing the nature of the New England town. In Joe's vocabulary, success is a very important word, but throughout our, page 10, throughout our conversations with him, it was consistently applied not to any status he had gained for himself, or even to any accomplishments he had realized for himself. Success rather applied to the experience of togetherness the community had created, partially through his efforts. So he really wanted to see the unity of the community there. To affirm the importance of Suffolk's tradition, page 11, Joe conjures up fictitious golden age of a town that has been corrupted by modern developments. There it is. The spirit of this age can be discovered, he believes, in the task of recovering it, and it can validate one's present life. So he wants to go back to the old way. That's not going to suffice. Page 12. The past was most certainly never as relaxed and innocent as Joe nostalgically remembers it. Joe's vision of the good life, seemingly rooted in family and rooted so firmly in the objective traditions of the community, is in the end highly subjective. That was truly his. It's not the objective reality out there. Then we get Margaret Oldman, the therapist. Yeah, she understands her family, but boy, not too much there. Go on page 14 with her. Being challenged by a variety of people different from herself is a continuing source of stimulation. As a therapist, she has an eclectic background, interactionist, Gestalt, or Rogerian. Doing therapy is almost as good for me as is for my client. So I do it a lot on that sort of a reward. I think just being exposed to different people's thoughts and ideas and problems, finding out, what their lives are like, it just sort of opens up new kinds of ideas. Then come this sentence. Every time I got a client for a while, I would totally think my view of the world, rethink my view of the world, because the client would come with all these different ideas and sort of innocently challenge the things that I consider to be very basic in life, and I have to go home and think about it for a while. For Margaret, The most important thing in life is doing whatever you choose to do as well as you can do it. Summing up her sense of meaning of life, I just sort of accept the way the world is, and they don't think about it a whole lot. I tend to operate on the assumption that what I want to do and what I feel like is what I should do. That's our values. That is complete individualism. And then poor Wayne over here, he's a social activist, and he wants to go down and empower the people so that they can do what they're doing. So it's not clear what specific things have to be done on page 19. So these newly liberated people that he's going to help. But what does it mean to be better? No, how's he going to define what's better? It's all relative over there in the second full paragraph. I'm probably not the best person to ask what's going to be better. He has no idea, but he's going to be active. He's going to be out there championing these people who he thinks are being tramped on, and they're just going to go right ahead and become better. So what's his idea of justice? So what we're talking about here is, look, we're talking in each of them about what is success. Okay, what is success? What is freedom? What is freedom? And what is justice? Three essential concepts for the functioning of a good society. You see how they're defining them over here. My freedom, for me to do my thing. Success, well, it was material. Now it's this, it was going to be something else. And justice, these people are being tramped on, but we're going to take it to something better. What do you mean by better? I don't know. But we'll do it. We're going to get active. I'm a volunteer. So they set this up for the book, okay? And then, towards the end of that chapter, we come to the three ideas here. And what I want you to do now, for the next time, we're going to leave a little bit early, I want you to read these three things over from 22 through 26 in my book, anyhow. And then I want you really to start reading those first other 5 chapters. I want to see what kind of an experience you have reading these. Interact with the text. Test it over against your own attitudes, and test it over against the people that you know, and test it over against the larger society in which we're trying to live now and find a common good. So we're just in the thick of it. This is probably the major portion of what we're going to go after, because here we are going to find the greatest contrasts between what a Catholic Christian community should be fostering as a school of spirituality, of communion and love, and that applies for schools. What kind of formation do we want? What kind of worldview do we want that is in contrast to, but can make a contribution to, the dominant way of life in this country? Am I explaining myself? You sort of get this? And because all of us, as we look at this, have to make a major shift. And the major shift can only come to the point that your own spiritual life is deepening more and more and more in putting on the image of Christ. That is the changing factor. And that the Holy Spirit, the new law consists in following the Holy Spirit, because the new law is what? What's the new law?
Love one another. As
Yeah. Love one another as
I love you.
I love you. Try that one on. Give that one to Joe Gorman. Give that to Brian. Give that to Margaret Olson. Ask him this. But here's a standard, which, by the way, which articulates the deepest dignity of the human person. That one commandment of Christ is the fullest description of what a human person is capable of and what a human person needs. To love and be loved. And then, how is that going to fit here, here, and here? Okay, that's enough for today. Glory to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit.
As it was in the beginning, is now, and shall be, world without